Imagine the worst dungeon ever in a castle, and then imagine that you can't stand up at all or you can't sit down. You're just forced to crouch in one position for 24 hours a day. Imagine being forced to live with the decaying remains of the prisoners that went before you, whose remains are being eaten by rats and vermin that lurk beneath your feet. But also imagine thinking inside of that dungeon that you'll be next. You'll be the next dead person, the next dead prisoner. The Oubliette was one of the worst fates conceivable and one of the most barbaric dungeons ever seen in castles. Welcome to Learn With Me, where we look at a variety of different topics and different subjects. As always, to support our channel, please make sure you click the subscribe button down below. So to begin with, the oubliette actually comes from the French term to forget, and that really sums up what the aim of the oubliette dungeon was. It was to throw a prisoner inside and literally forget them, to just leave them to decompose and die. That was the aim of the game. Some oubliettes were bottle shaped and they had a neck at the top, which meant it would prevent prisoners from escaping, and they could not climb up the sides of the cell to get out. But it was very cramped, and some were even built into the side of walls and cupboards to ensure that a prisoner could be locked away and simply left to die. But most of them are found inside of basements, and they were very, very cramped. You were literally in one position all day and you could not move. A lot of the oubliettes forced people to not even stand or sit, so you'd be forced into a really bent over crouch position for 24 hours a day, and this would play havoc with your body but also with your mind. The oubliette had a really strong aspect of psychological torture applied to it, and it would drive prisoners absolutely insane, being confined within the same four walls for 24 hours a day. Oubliettes also were very dark and dingy, and they were usually pitch black. Some also had toilets and sewers flowing into them, which meant that prisoners would be forced to sit in human waste, and obviously this would cause disease and illness, and that was really what the guards hoped. At times, they wanted to bring about the quick death of a prisoner, and they believed they would hopefully inflict disease upon them. They would also throw dead animals into the oubliette as well, and it was a really horrible, horrible environment to be locked inside of. But as mentioned, one of the biggest problems with it was the psychological torture and punishment it would play on your mind. You were literally confined within a very, very small amount of space for 24 hours a day, and you knew you were never going to get out. There are some really famous oubliettes around, and one of them in particular is at Warwick Castle, which is literally not too far away from where I live. Warwick Castle is a beautiful medieval castle, but it's got a really dark secret that's literally lurking in the corner, tucked away inside of the courtyard. You can literally walk past it because it's hard to see, but in the corner of one of the towers in the basement is a prison or a jail. And what you do is you walk down the stairs of the jail, and literally in the basement you come into a torture chamber. When you walk into the basement, it's really interesting because on the walls you've got leg irons, you've got brands, what prisoners would be branded with hot iron, and it's really a really dingy and tight environment. But tucked away for a little passageway is an oubliette, and it's probably one of England's most famous oubliettes. It's tiny, it's literally just a hole in the ground with a grill on top that's secured with a padlock, and a prisoner would be lowered into it and then literally locked in place once they were lying down, lying flat, and then literally forgotten. There would have been a door securing the top of the oubliette so they couldn't get out, and also there would have been another door securing the actual entranceway to the oubliette. This meant that the screams of the prisoner inside could not be heard, and someone was literally just forgotten in there. The Warwick Castle dungeon is really interesting because during the 100 Years' War, the fear about it even spread to the French soldiers that the English were fighting, and at battles such as the Battle of Poitiers, the French soldiers would really evade capture because they were so scared of being thrown into Warwick Castle's oubliette. But inside that particular oubliette, the walls would be jabbing into you, and there was literally no room to move or stand up, and it would have been truly horrifying to be locked inside of. Another oubliette-style dungeon that's been lost to time is known as Little-Ease, and it's found at the Tower of London. The Tower of London is obviously one of the world's most infamous prisons that was made following the Norman Conquest, but over time it developed a really nasty reputation during the Tudor period for execution, with two queens losing their heads inside of there, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, and also Lady Jane Grey I suppose later on during the reign of Mary I, but also it developed a reputation for torture. And Little-Ease, it's said, was found in the basement of the White Tower, and it was literally an oubliette-style dungeon where a prisoner was forced into, and they could not stand or sit for a long period of time. But because of this, the beefeaters would lock someone inside of there, and it would play psychological hell with their mind. It's even said that Guy Fawkes, a gunpowder plotter, was locked inside of Little-Ease, and it was that finally broke him after his ordeal on the rack. Even a beefeater, a guard who was supposed to work there, was locked inside of Little after he had a love affair with a lady called Alice Tankerville. The two planned to leave the Tower of London and escape, and they did actually get out of the gates, but they were quickly then captured, and because John Board was a beefeater, a man supposed to protect the prisoners and keep them locked up, he was actually hanged in chains, where he was forced inside of Little before. Every time I go into the Tower of London now, I go into the basement, and I have a little look to see if I can spot where Little would be. Apparently it was a little cupboard where someone was literally just forced into and locked in. But after recent works you can walk inside of the basement and have a little look inside, and you can see different rooms. And there's a couple of rooms in particular that do look like torture chambers, and the one similar at Warwick Castle. Another oubliette was found at LEP Castle in Ireland. Now this one was truly horrific. In the 1920s, excavation work took place at the castle, and they found inside of the oubliette a number of spikes, but also they found a lot of human remains. In the previous centuries, clans had fought over LEP Castle a number of times, and it was a place of siege and great warfare. But it took 3 carts to remove all of the remains from the oubliette there. This shows how many prisoners would have been locked inside of that cell at LEP Castle, and they were literally forgotten about until centuries later. But the oubliette was a dungeon you really did not want to end up in. If you're claustrophobic, it would have been the worst feeling in the world, and even if you're not, it would have been absolutely harrowing, contemplating your imminent demise every single day. Thanks for watching. As always, to support this brand new channel, please click the subscribe button down below. As I mentioned in the previous video, this is a brand new channel, so if you do have any ideas for videos, be it history, geography, lots of other subjects, because we're going to cover lots of different things on here, please put a comment down below. As always, thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.